Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Waiver Wire Podcast. It's me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and it's time to add some players because, well, injuries are just a part of life in the NFL, and there's been some big ones over this weekend's action, and we're going to get you up to date with the guys that you need to add at every single position and some streamers that can help you out in the short term. To help me do it, of course, Pat Fitzmaurice, my Patty Cakes, and D-Bro, Derek Brown, the King of Bros. We're going to be on here today talking about the waiver wire as we are every single Monday. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and, of course, ring that bell till it goes ding because we're always giving away fabulous prizes. And speaking of giving away fabulous prizes, we're going to be giving away right now that Trophy Smack 36-inch custom fantasy football trophy. And the winner is Totally Radical. Totally Radical. You're the big winner. Please get in touch with us over at our customer support agents at mailbag@fantasypros.com with your mailing address, proof of your subscription to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel, and we'll get that shipped out to you right away. Again, Totally Radical. Congratulations, you're the big winner. And when one giveaway goes away, another one takes its place. Just like the waiver wire, right? A player goes down, somebody else shows up. Same thing here. Trophy Smacks Unlimited 6-pound custom championship belt giveaway is happening right now. We've partnered with our good friends at Trophy Smack to give you the ultimate symbol of fantasy football dominance, a 6-pound custom championship belt. It weighed a little bit more than D-Bro when he was born. This massive, fully customizable belt is the one for you. It's a perfect way to show off for your fantasy football titles, and you can use one of Trophy Smack's designs so you can personalize it with your own image or logo to make it truly unique. How do you get this? I'll tell you. Subscribe to the Fantasy Bros YouTube channel, comment below, and ring the bell till it goes ding. That's it. That's all you need to do. Gentlemen, back to the waiver wire, and we start with our waiver wire ad of the week. This was predicted a few weeks ago in the podcast where I mentioned this. I said, I can't wait till we get in season, and Quentin Johnston 1 week is the waiver wire ad of the week, and it only took a few weeks. Here we are, it's week 3, and it's Quentin Johnston. Now, I know what you're going to say. Well, I don't know if we could possibly believe this is something repeatable. However, 17% rostered in all of sleeper leagues, 2 touchdowns yesterday in week 2, 5 catches for 51. Pat, look, there's opportunity for somebody to step up in this Chargers offense. Jim Harbaugh has this team playing well. They're playing well in the trenches. They seem very comfortable here. They've gotten off to a 2-0 start. Granted, the competition might not have been the best, but it looked like a coming out party for Quentin Johnston. The question is, how aggressive do you want to be on what you saw yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, apparently the off-season surgery to replace the frying pans at the end of Quentin Johnston's arms with actual hands was successful. So,
Pat chose violence this morning.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that.
D-Bro, note to self, never, ever cross Pat because, that was like
I knew
burns.
he was a savage, but man. Can we also throw it in there that Marquez Valdez-Scantling had the same type of surgery, but it didn't take? He had auto rejection.
So, yeah, I mean, like, this is encouraging to see from Quentin Johnston. He looks like the player the Chargers spent a first-round pick on. And you just wonder how comfortable would you be putting Quentin Johnston in your week 3 lineup? For me, level of comfort still isn't that great because we know this is going to be a run-heavy team. I do think for a lot of people, Quentin Johnston would be a good replacement for maybe the last wide receiver at the end of your bench. But I don't recommend blowing out the fab for him, and that's, I think, going to be a theme of this show, Joe. It might be a week to keep your powder dry. But like of the widely available players, I do agree that Quentin Johnston probably looks like he's got the most upside.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are talking about the backfield of Kansas City Chiefs with the Pacheco injury. We'll get to that in a second. But again, that's a situation that I know Pat has a lot of information on too that he's going to share with you guys today to maybe pump the brakes just a little bit on that scenario. But to Pat's point, probably better than whatever's at the bottom of your bench. Also intriguing if the trend continues where he might work his way into not only a bye week coverage guy, but maybe a flex-worthy guy or a wide receiver 3. That's in the potential range of outcomes here when it comes to Quentin Johnston here, as you like to say, D-Bro.
I was going to say, you sound like me when you're going through all that, Joe.
It's because I'm sick today. That's why. It's the cold medicine.
You're ill. You're ill. Unless
so my sexy voice today is anything I say in the show today, take it with a grain of salt because I'm definitely hyped up on Dayquil for 100%.
You have the full-blown Phoebe buffet going on right now. It's pretty nice. I like it. I like it. If anybody's old enough to get the reference, but Look, speaking of smelly cats, I mean, Quentin Johnston might not be the most sexy ad of the week, but I get it, boys. And somebody's got to step up in this passing attack, like Patty talked about. Like, look, I don't think we can shy away from the fact that he not only got the 2 touchdowns, but he got a 30% target share, and he led the team in wide receiver routes run. So this could be a situation where this passing attack is just who has the matchup, who has the best matchup this week. And that's how we're rolling it. But even in that type of scenario, that still leaves Quentin Johnston as maybe becoming a wide receiver 3/flex play to where the matchup is right, which I'm worried about the next upcoming matchups, like the Steelers and the Chiefs. Not great, and then they get a bye week. But this is more of a season-long ad where you're looking at, is the matchup right, and is this a scenario where the Chargers could be forced to throw, and then QJ ends up being a wide receiver 3 or a strong flex play for the week?
Yeah. Look, again, is Quentin Johnston going to save your season? Probably not. No. Could he possibly become a contributor? I think the answer is yes. And definitely depending on where you're playing your leagues, we see varying roster percentages between some of the guys we're going to talk about today on Yahoo, on Sleeper, versus CBS, and some other spots. So a lot to get to today on today's show. But speaking of the guy who scored 2 touchdowns, he took it to the house for 6. And whenever you can call a touchdown, one thing's for sure, touchdowns matter more. At DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, on the ground or in the air, from the special teams or defense, we don't care how you score them. Just score touchdowns, and DraftKings is the sportsbook with the #1 place to bet touchdowns. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use that promo code FantasyPros. That's promo code FantasyPros for new customers, and get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5, and you get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Sounds pretty good to me. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, boys, let's get to the Chiefs running back situation. Samaje Perine, 8% rostered. Carson Steele, again, great name. I mean, straight out of a telenovela, 2% rostered. Debro, a situation here where the fibula situation that's broken for Isaiah Pacheco, he's going to miss a significant amount of time here. It's frustrating. It happened at the end of the game. As soon as I saw him come off the field, I knew something was drastically wrong with him. You could just tell on his face he was wearing it. But is the Chiefs' backfield worth splurging and going overboard on? Because in the past, we have chased a lot of names in this backfield over time when somebody's gotten hurt. And it seems like even Pacheco was, to a certain degree, limited, I want to say. You know, I mean, we're not looking for – it's been a while since the days of the Larry Johnsons and Priest Holmes and the guys in that backfield back in the day in the Kansas City Chiefs that really kind of blew the doors off of fantasy. That really hasn't been the Mahomes situation in this offense. But how do you see these two guys, Perine and Steele specifically, and how would you bid on them accordingly, let's say, depending on how much you're hurting at running back, and if you have Pacheco, who's the priority?
I'm not splurging for either one of these guys. I think 10%, maybe 11%, the most aggressive scenarios, which means I'm probably not going to get him in a lot of different spots. And the guy, if I'm going to go after one of them, you can miss me with Samaje Perine. That's fine. I'm totally fine with not getting him on waivers. I think there's still a chance that this team could re-sign Jerick McKinnon off the street. But if I'm going to go with one guy, it's Carson Steele. And this comes down to usage, guys. And I know he's not the most athletically gifted type of guy. Like, we're talking about a situation where we're looking at a talent level of a la Darrell Williams, a la somebody in the way back of the Wayback Machine, Matt Asiata. That's what I feel like we're talking about here. Somebody,
there you go.
We're talking about the offensive situation. We're talking about touchdowns. We're talking about the situation is better than the talent, and not really trying to shade Carson Steele, but he's not the fastest guy, not the best at breaking tackles. It comes down to situation. And look, I get it. It's Kansas City. I understand that. He is the guy that I would go after if I pick one of these guys, just simply because he got the short yardage work. He got the goal line work last week. 3 of 8 goal line snaps in week 2, and short yardage situations, 3 of 5 snaps. So I think that we're looking at who could be an RB3, a touchdown dependent RB3. And really that's the way you need to frame this, because I doubt either one of these guys are going to be an RB2 weekly. This is going to be a committee, a gross committee. And I think that Kansas City just leans into their passing attack more. So if I'm going to go after one of them, it's Carson Steele, but I'm probably not willing to break the bank, and other people might be.
Pat, what's your budget like for these two guys? And if so, do you have a preference of which one? And are you where Debro is, which is, I don't want to go overboard on these guys on week 3.
I'm where Debro is, but I might want to spend even less than the 10 or 11% that Debro is willing to offer up for these guys. It is possible that Carson Steele becomes the new Peyton Hillis and is this sensation. I mean, Carson Steele did have a 1,500-yard rushing season for Ball State in 2022. The 4.7 speed, not that sexy, but you don't always need to be fast to be effective as a running back in the NFL. It is possible that maybe Samaje Perine gets the bulk of the early down work and becomes an RB2 or at least a flex-worthy play while Pacheco is out. Let's not forget about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's sitting on the non-football injury reserve list with post-traumatic stress disorder, not eligible to come back until week 5, but very possible he's part of the solution for the Chiefs in the backfield upon his return. Let's not discount the possibility that the Chiefs go out and re-sign Jerick McKinnon, as was maybe rumored throughout the offseason, to play on passing downs and then Perine, Steele, CEH, chop up the early down work. And we can't even rule out the possibility of a trade. I mean, the Panthers would probably give up Miles Sanders for a bologna sandwich right now. A 7th rounder in 2026, he's all yours, Chiefs. So there could be a lot of solutions. I think the thing that's worth remembering, Joe, in 3 of the last 5 seasons for the Chiefs, no running back has reached 600 rushing yards. Like, a lot of people have lit fab money on fire chasing Chiefs backs in recent years. Damian Williams, Darrell Williams, Sharkandrick West. Chances are a lot of the people listening to or watching this show right now have spent fab money on one or more of those players in the last 5-6 years. Yeah. Guilty. So this is a messy situation. And I know people are going to be champing at the bit because the Chiefs offense is a bright light. We are the bugs that are drawn to the bright light, and it's understandable. But in this case, that bright light might be a bug zapper or better yet, a fab zapper. Because, I don't know if the value is really there for us with the guys we're going to be throwing fab money at this week.
Debro, is it just me or is it Fitzy on fire today?
I'm just listening to everything he's saying. I'm like,
He's like a poet laureate. I mean, it's unbelievable. All right, let's get to Rico Dowdle, 50% rostered in most leagues. As predicted, a lot of people lost patience and dropped him in week 1. But what was interesting yesterday is he caught 4 of the 5 targets. He had 29 yards receiving, 30 yards rushing. Pat Dowdle, to me, is a guy that, again, I was being patient with for the first month of the season. I'm just saying at some point, you're going to have to turn the page at running back from Zeke to Rico. And I feel like you kind of see things the same way here. I was embarrassing loss yesterday for the Dallas Cowboys at home. Another the last 2 times they played at home, it's been embarrassing. That's the only word to use. So, Pat, where are you at with Rico Dowdle here? Would you be more aggressive on him as opposed to the guys in the Chiefs backfield?
I would be. I think he is probably the safest of the possible spackle backs, Joe. If you're desperately in need of someone to plug into your starting lineup and just get, bare minimum 4 or 5 fantasy points, maybe ideally 8, 9. And maybe there is a chance that at some point he takes over for Ezekiel Elliott, because clearly we're not getting vintage Ezekiel Elliott anymore. Possible this just remains a true 50-50 the rest of the way, but Rico Dowdle has a foothold in a pretty good offense. And I mean, that to me is the most attractive thing on waivers. And I know he's not going to be available for everyone. Like in deeper leagues, he is still rostered in a lot of spots. He's available in more than half of Yahoo leagues. But in deeper leagues, probably not there for you. If he is, though, and you really need help at running back, I think he's probably the best possible solution for you in week 3.
Debro, what are your thoughts on Rico Dowdle real quick?
Yeah, that's exactly where I've been the entire time. I've been saying, look, get him tossed into a trade, add him off of waivers, however you can get him on your roster, because Ezekiel Elliott's not going to be the guy for the entire year. And we're already seeing kind of, as you like to put it, Joe, the worm is turning here a little bit in the sense of how the usage. I mean, was it 50-50 in a lot of different instances? Sure. But Rico led the team in snaps this last week. He tied for the team lead in routes. But I think if you look at the nitty gritty of his usage, he got 5 of 6 snaps in short yardage situations. He had the majority of snaps in 2-minute drill. So he's slowly eating away at the usage we want in this backfield. I think it's only a matter of time that we're 2 or 3 weeks down the road, and now Rico Dowdle is playing 60% of the snaps. He's getting all the high leverage work. He's getting the passing work because Dallas, they're not good enough on offense, and they don't have enough weapons outside of CeeDee Lamb to really be this top 5 passing rate team. And they're not good enough to run the dang ball to sit here and take teams off of defending the pass. So you need to do something to change up the equation. And that means what I think they should do is less Zeke, more Dowdle, have the ability to actually freaking run the ball. And I think we're going to see that in the weeks coming.
Look, they need it bad. They got to do something there. That was just wretched. No offense to the Saints. The Saints have been bringing
no offense.
You know,
I mean,
I don't want to disparage the Saints here.
Are just stacking up bodies in this early part of the season, man. And it's pretty glorious.
The fact that they went in there without Lattimore and did that too. You know, arguably their best defensive player. I mean, that was just stunning to me. Ty Chandler also kind of stunning. He led his team, the Vikings, 10 carries, 82 rushing yards. Now, I'm not saying this is a trend here, D-Bro, necessarily we're going to count on, but is Chandler a guy worth adding and speculating on in week 3?
I just think it's more of an anomaly. Call me a Ty Chandler hater, but not a great tackle breaker. I still think this is Aaron Jones' backfield. He's going to get all the passing down snaps and the high leverage stuff. He's in this long scrum of okay, pick your flavor du jour of handcuff. Do you like Tyler Azure? Do you like Ty Chandler?
Right.
Maybe I can interest you in a little bit of Samaje Perine. I'm not going to throw out bids for Ty Chandler this week.
Pat, what about Diontae Foreman? Only 4% rostered, but he also had a team high 15 touches. So these were two guys, Chandler and Foreman, that kind of surprising, I think, a lot of people in terms of where they were at when the dust settled in terms of volume in the backfield.
And it was interesting that Foreman did get the majority of the carries, not only for the game for the Browns, but also in that very first offensive series of the game. So, obviously this is bad news if you're a Jerome Ford stakeholder, that this is going to probably be some sort of split backfield going forward. And the window of value for Diontae Foreman could be limited. Nick Chubb expected to come back at some point, and that window pretty much slams shut when Chubb comes back. But right now, it's just going to be hard to predict usage here. Foreman doesn't have really any pass catching upside. He did have a 9-yard catch yesterday, but I maybe worth a small bid, but I don't think I don't know if he has surpassed Jerome Ford in this backfield yet. I'm not ready to go there. Can I just go back to Chandler for a minute? Sure, I just want to mention that it's funny. D-Bro's the Ty Chandler hater. Bo McBrayer, who does the waiver wire article every week with us at Fantasy Pros, is the Ty Chandler truther. I'm somewhere in between. I guess I'm the Ty Chandler agnostic. Bo, I think, thinks there's a possibility that he could bypass Aaron Jones on the merits. I don't think it's happening either.
That's not happening.
Where I haul out the Andre the Giant gif, no, whoa.
No.
Hold on. But I will say this Vikings running game has looked terrific through the first 2 weeks. Kevin O'Connell knows what he is doing. And this offense has looked good. So even if it is a 60-40 Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler split, that might offer some value to Chandler. O'Connell's smart enough. He knows Aaron Jones can't handle 20 touches a week. He's just not built to take that. And the Aaron Jones preservation plan probably involves a healthy dose of Ty Chandler.
What about the Dolphins backfield, Pat? Jalen Wright, still under 50% rostered. Same thing with Jeffrey Wilson Jr. Everyone was kind of scrambling around. HN ended up having a huge game. Would you be wanting to roster these guys and speculating, especially since we're going to be without Tua for a considerable amount of time? One would think at least a month or somewhere around there. If he comes back at all, we'll see how that all works itself out. But it seems like that run game is going to get leaned on heavily. Would you be speculating on those two guys?
No, just because they are number 3 and number 4. And we don't know who's number 3 or number 4 right now. We saw last Thursday that Mike McDaniel's perfectly willing to lean pretty heavily on Devon Achane. I don't think he can do that every week. Maybe a little too hard.
Well,
maybe Devon Achane shouldn't be in the game.
That's kind of my point about it, is you saw how much he leaned on him, and that would scare the crap out of me. If I had Achane, I'd want to have another piece of one of these guys.
I don't want to see him do that. That was scary.
I know. I think McDaniel was just on tilt that Achane was in there in the last 5 minutes of a game where they're trailing by 3 scores. But Achane did handle a really heavy load at Texas A&M. Like, he's tough for a little dude. And Mostert's going to come back. He's going to be the number 2. It would probably take both of those guys getting hurt, I think, for either Wilson or Jalen Wright to be someone you'd want to put in your lineup. So I'm not betting any money on either guy.
All right. What about dropping guys like Justice Hill, Alexander Mattison? Are those guys for you, D-Row? Could you jettison them for Rico Dowdle this week?
Yep. Easy. Done. Gone. Both of them.
Just to be clear, too, so everybody's listening out there, if you have Pacheco, D-Row, who would be the guy on these running back lists that you would most covet in week 3?
It's Dowdle. Dowdle
for you,
clear and far away.
Me too.
Okay. All right. So there you go. All right. Let's switch gears to the other side of the football here with the wide receivers. And let's talk about some of the guys that we want to add this week. We already talked about Quentin Johnston. Before we talk about the rest of these guys, I want to remind everybody, too, about one of the sponsors of today's show, which is the Game Time app. Now, if you're trying to get to a football game live and have a fond memory of maybe a college football game, or you want to take your kids to an NFL game, is a great way to do it. It's the Game Time app. And those are moments that you will remember forever. How much you pay for parking, how long it takes you to get in and out of the stadium, the rudeness of the people around you. These are the moments that you cherish with your loved ones. But in all seriousness, a great way to get tickets for any game, whether it be baseball, football, college football, NBA, you name it. Game Time app has it. And you can pick an upcoming game on the app. You can browse through the seats at Game Time Picks, and you can also get great deals that way. A great way too is people always talk about the fees of tickets and how difficult that is. That's where Game Time comes into. They eliminate a lot of those, which is so much better. It's such a better ticket buying experience, especially if you're looking to get something last minute, you got shut out of something and you're trying desperately to get into an event. Game Time is a way to do it. I've been searching on the app for some Pearl Jam tickets lately. I was trying to get in to see New York, but unfortunately for me, nobody wants to give up their Pearl Jam tickets. So I was stuck, but you don't have to be stuck. So if it's theater, if it's comedy shows, if it's sports, the Game Time app has you covered. The best way to do it is to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time and download the Game Time app right now. Create an account and use that promo code FantasyPros to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code FantasyPros, FANTASYPROS, for $20 off. Game Time right now. Download that bad boy. What time is it? It's game time. All right, let's talk about the wide receivers, gentlemen. Now, Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, 2 guys on the Rams who are going to see some more work, with Cooper Kupp likely having some time missed and Puka Nacua out for God knows how many weeks. So here we are. The Rams have already fallen apart, which it stinks. I mean, it's just my worst fears came to fruition of that huge workload. People were laughing at Andrew last week when he was talking about selling Cooper Kupp on the Tuesday show with that volume. And you know what? I don't think they're laughing right now. So good job by Erickson on that one. I hate giving him credit, but I have to. But look, the offensive line is a shambles here, T-Bro. Demarcus Robinson already over 54% roster. Tyler Johnson, 26% rostered. With that offensive line currently the way it is, make the case for these guys, how you want to approach having them on your roster, and are they startable going into next week?
I think Demarcus Robinson is. I think in deeper formats, Tyler Johnson is, but Demarcus Robinson's the guy that if I'm going to open up the piggy bank a little bit for a wide receiver for short and long-term value here with Kupp out, and we're still waiting on the timetable of what that looks like. It's going to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks more. Puka Nacua, again, like we were seeing timelines, he might not be back until after midseason. Yeah. So you're looking at a situation where Demarcus Robinson is going to be the wide receiver 1 for the Rams offense. So I think that in most ranges where you're looking at what's the ceiling outcome for him in that type of role, it's probably as a weekly flex or a wide receiver 3. And I mean, look, he led the team last week and they got the doors blown off of them versus the Cardinals. Wasn't expecting that to happen, but again, here we are. But he led the team in receiving yards and quietly has been really good as a route runner and separator. I mean, week 1, 78 qualifying wide receivers, 33rd in separation, 13th in win rate. So I think he can draw targets, but really, even in the best case scenarios, he's probably just a wide receiver 3, but that's probably worth 12 to 15% of your fab, considering where we're at with injuries and certain offenses like falling off a map just after 2 weeks of football.
Yeah, Cardinals were terrific yesterday. And what a surprise, everybody. Marvin Harrison Jr. is good at football. No kidding. No kidding. Everybody freaking out after week 1. I told you, calm down What are you doing? Relax. That guy was amazing at 130 yards at halftime, I feel like. Pat, these two Rams wide receivers, and if you want to throw Jordan Whittington into that conversation too, because that guy had some eye-opening moments in the preseason that caused me in some deeper, dynasty leagues to just kind of stash him on my bench just to see if a path opened up to playing time. And I feel like we are on that precipice. Like, I can't ask for anything more with Demarcus Robinson, with Johnson, and with Whittington, where, these guys now have an opportunity. Who is most appealing to you based on their cost?
It's Demarcus Robinson. Not available in a lot of leagues. I started Demarcus Robinson in 2 deep leagues this past week, and that was with the expectation that Cooper Kupp was probably going to get 20 targets if he stayed healthy all game. So now, Demarcus Robinson becomes very appealing. And Tyler Johnson, too, who's more widely available, probably a guy who is not rostered in the vast majority of leagues. And Tyler Johnson was an outstanding college receiver for the University of Minnesota. And part of the reason I was pretty high on Rashad Bateman when he was coming out was that Bateman was able to go in and immediately carve out a significant target share for himself, despite the presence of Tyler Johnson, who is this terrific receiver. So Tyler Johnson can play, worth throwing a few bucks at if you're desperate at wide receiver, because I do think he is going to play a pretty prominent role here while Kupp and Nacua are out.
All right, let's talk about Jerry Jeudy for a moment. Now, on Sleeper, he's over 50%, but on Yahoo, he's closer to 40%. Pat, Jerry Jeudy, obviously a guy that in the past has been somebody we coveted as a fantasy wide receiver. Elijah Moore on that offense, too, continues to get some looks. And he left for Jerry Jeudy on the waiver wire this week at wide receiver.
A little bit. I've been reluctant, and Debro is starting to sell me. He might be able to add more about Jerry Jeudy's usage. I do think he's appealing. I don't think he's necessarily replacing Amari Cooper as the alpha dog in this offense. And by the way, no, you should not drop Amari Cooper after 2 disappointing games. But yeah, Jeudy does have some appeal. He's pretty clearly the number 2. Maybe it gets a little messier when David Njoku eventually comes back. But on the other hand, like if we do see Jameis Winston at some point and this offense goes all Joe Flacco-esque on us with a much more pass-heavy approach, not that a Winston appearance is imminent. Like Deshaun Watson was much better in week 2 than he was in week 1. Not the Houston Texans era Deshaun Watson, but in week 1 he was kind of a train wreck.
He was better. Look, I think we can all agree he was better.
Yeah.
Was he great? No. Was he better? Sure.
But anyway, that's the bonanza you're hoping for, I guess, if you're investing in Jerry Jeudy, maybe that eventually we see Jameis Winston.
All right, what's your bonanza of Jerry Jeudy look like, Debro?
Look, I think that he's definitely he's my number 1 wide receiver ad this week. I think it's between him and Demarcus Robinson, but looking at Jerry Jeudy and the context of the offensive line is still pretty good. I think we're eventually going to see Jameis Winston starting games. I think it's going to happen. I'll push back on Deshaun Watson completed 22 of 34 passes. That's cool. That's great. That's grand. He still had 5.5 yards per attempt. And this was like top 5 kind of smash matchup considering the state of the Jacksonville secondary. So I still think Deshaun Watson is god awful.
In fairness, didn't have a starting tackle, Steve Bro. Deshaun Watson, 2 starting off.
In all fairness, he hasn't had a starting caliber arm in 2 seasons. So, it is what it is. But
also a fair point. Look, Debro, if you think Winston is going to show up sooner or later, Elijah Moore, Jeudy, buying low at Amari Cooper, are these assets you're looking to acquire now and anticipating that?
They are. They are. And with Jerry Jeudy, him being only rostered at 41% on Yahoo when we were prepping for this show, I'm sure as we're recording this, it's probably going to tick up closer to 50%. But the thing is, if he's out there, you need to pick him up. And I love the matchups upcoming for Jerry Jeudy. He's got the Giants, the Raiders, and the Commanders. Which one of those secondaries is anybody worried about? Those are bonanza type secondaries. If we can get at least somewhat competent play out of Watson, or if Jameis Winston is under center for any of those matchups, then I think the ceiling and the floor can both be raised for Jerry Jeudy. And I think he's going to walk out of this week with another wide receiver 3 performance. He was wide receiver 33 in week 1. And with the target volume that he's garnering and what he's doing with it, I think that there's a way where he is competing right now. We've seen it after 2 weeks for the target lead every single week with Amari Cooper, and he's doing more with the volume right now.
All right, Pat, Alec Pierce, 23% rostered, Josh Downs, 27% rostered, despite the fact that Downs hasn't played yet. Both these Colts wide receivers. Pat, Which one of these two do you think has the most use the rest of the season?
I think Josh Downs, maybe just for target volume. Man, Alec Pierce, the weekly floor is just so low because he's not going to be a high target guy. You need to live on that big play, and you're not going to get it every week. It's just basically, Joe, you can miss me up with all the Colts wide receivers. I just do not really want to invest in this passing game. Like even Michael Pittman is failing to provide an adequate return for his investors. And
I think that'll turn around. I think the more
so
time,
do I.
Yeah.
So do I.
too.
And that's the thing. I mean, the passing volume in this offense is just going to be so low. Like, I don't really want anyone other than Pittman as far as the pass catchers in Indy.
Debro, you feel the same way? Is it Downs, but it's really Pittman and nobody else?
I think it's Downs, and I mean deeper formats. I think that there's a conversation to be had for Alec Pierce in most 10, 12 team formats. You're not considering Pierce. You're really looking at Downs because I think that once he's healthy, he's going to be the clear number 2 wide receiver. But look, if you are in deeper formats, I'm with throwing like 2 to 3% of your fab at Alec Pierce. I mean, we can't fully discount week after week what he's doing. I know that he only got 3 targets in week 1, but he was freaking fantastic. He has the field stretching role in this team. And with Downs coming back, I think it's going to be AD Mitchell and not Alec Pierce going to the bench. I mean, Donnie Mitchell is still not playing full-time snaps. He was splitting the slot role even this week with Ashton Doolin. So Pierce, he's stacking up solid performances. We saw what he did week 1. He tied for the team lead in targets, led them in routes in week 2. So I think if you're going for one of these guys in a vacuum, it's Downs. But I do think Pierce also carries deeper league like flex appeal if you're in a 12-teamer and it's, long benches or a 14-teamer.
Can I make one?
Sure.
One quick point. The Colts just failed to beat the Green Bay Packers with Malik Willis quarterbacking the Green Bay Packers. Like if this season goes south for the Colts fast, and it might because their defense is pretty wretched. I think we're going to see an audition for Adonai Mitchell, and that would really sort of kneecap the value of Downs and Pierce.
Interesting point of view. How can I interest you, gentlemen, in a guy who caught 6 of 9 targets for 82 yards? Because his name is Jalen Tolbert, and he's only rostered in 6% of leagues. Debro, Tolbert's a guy that we heard some buzz about this offseason. And, if the Dallas Cowboys are going to pull themselves out of this rut here that they've been in, it feels like they got to start turning the page to some of these younger players. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Like Brandon Cooks is not going to be the savior of your season. He's not going to be able to hold up and really carry the water for weeks when teams are like, look, we're taking CeeDee Lamb away from you. There's nothing you're going to do about it. We're going to bracket him and make other players beat them. And Jalen Tolbert has to step up. And especially he's probably the guy on this list that is locked inside of what can we say maybe the most passing volume type of situation where he could get the most targets on a weekly basis if he can continue to earn them. And I think it was really telling. Like I was watching the game yesterday because yes, I'm a self-loving, not loathing at the moment Saints fan. I don't know how to deal with this. And he made a fan
during the Drew Brees era at all. Come on,
I know, man. And Tolbert made a fantastic catch versus the Saints, and what he did versus a really good secondary, I think people need to stand up and take attention to it because 23% target share, almost 2.0 yards per route run. Yeah, I mean, plus he's got good matchups coming up. Like Baltimore, sure, that's not great. But then he gets the Giants and then the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I'm saying the Steelers because CeeDee Lamb is probably going to be followed all around the field by Joey Porter Jr. So Tolbert's going to get the lesser coverage here. So I think Tolbert's probably the name on this list where he wasn't at the top of this list at the beginning of this program, but he's probably going to come cheap and at like 2-3% of your fab that you're going to have to put out there to get him, but he might have the most upside considering the passing volume for Dallas out of any of these guys.
Pat, what do you think the upside for Tolbert is?
I'm not as enthusiastic as Debro, mainly because CeeDee Lamb is one of the most prolific target hogs in the NFL. Brandon Cooks is still good, made one of the best catches I saw in week 2. And Jake Ferguson is going to be back pretty soon, and we know that's going to funnel more targets in the direction of the tight end position for Dallas. Yeah, the passing volume is going to be high because this team is so questionable at running back, but I just don't know if there's enough weekly target volume for Jalen Tolbert to be really playable in fantasy. And like, even if there is a good cornerback on CD Lamb, I mean, what's the over under on targets with Joey Porter Jr. covering? I'm still probably like 11.5. Like, he is going to get targeted no matter what. So I don't know if there's enough spillover to make Jalen Tolbert fantasy relevant.
What about getting ahead on the Mike Williams train a little bit? 38% rostered, had a big catch yesterday, the game for the Jets. He's still working his way back, getting healthy. Can you see him, Pat, being an interesting stash right now before he has a game with a touchdown and a big, all of a sudden a big stat line? Would he be a guy that you're stashing just 38% rostered currently?
I think so, just because it's such a limited target tree. Not many branches on the target tree for the Jets. And, it's Garrett Wilson, and there's probably room for one other receiver or tight end. And we haven't seen Aaron Rodgers show much of a proclivity to target Tyler Conklin in the passing game. Williams went from playing 9 snaps in week 1 to playing 37 snaps in week 2. So maybe the ramp up is going a little faster than we thought it might after week 1. I think that's encouraging. And Big Mike, I mean, dude is still really he can be a very poor man's Mike Evans, perhaps, a guy who's just fantastic in contested catch situations, a rebounder with his size. And Aaron Rodgers, throughout his career, has shown a willingness to, aggressively target guys like that who don't necessarily get a lot of separation. But Rodgers is so pinpoint, he can put the ball where he needs to and let those contested catch guys make plays.
Well, Alan Lazard obviously was not the one to chase last week. We told you on the show that did not work out very well, unfortunately, for those people. Just the stat line real quick, too, just to grab it for him was 2 catches for 11 yards. 2 catches for 11 yards. So if you're looking to hedge a little bit with another Jets wide receiver, maybe, just maybe, it would be the Mike Williams situation there, too. Not that he's ever healthy, but, who knows? Maybe you get lucky for a couple games and start him. I saw somebody, Pat, that traded Alan Lazard and got Devontae Adams last week. That is insane. They sent me the screenshot, and they said, should this be vetoed? And
That's what we talked about on stream, wasn't it, Joey?
And I said, you should never veto trades, but this is the worst thing this is one of the worst things I've ever seen. It's just so short-sighted. It's so ridiculous. But that's what happens. I mean, people, they freak out. They freak out when these things happen. Speaking of dropping Alan Lazard, what about Diontae Johnson? Would you be dropping him, D-Bro? Because this Carolina Panthers offense looks pretty bad. Would you rather have Quentin Johnston or Diontae Johnson right now?
Quentin. I know that sounds like an overreaction, but
it does a little bit.
Bryce Young, there's nothing resembling competent quarterback play in Carolina right now. Like, there's nobody that's startable in that offense. Like, I woke up this morning and I was like thinking about writing that team up. Like, when I get to the primer this week for Carolina, and I'm like, am I just going to put a blurb in there where it just says, don't worry about it. Don't start anybody from Carolina. Cause like, that's basically, there's nobody that's fantasy viable in that offense right now. So like 6 targets, if 2 of them are catchable, what does it matter?
Interesting news, too, just broke. The Dolphins are signing Tyler Huntley off the Ravens practice squad.
Oh.
So that is an intriguing piece of news, too, for those of you in Superflex formats. How about you there, Pat? Diontae Johnson or Quentin Johnston?
Joe, you're a baseball guy. Worst 2024 team, Chicago White Sox or Carolina Panthers?
Oh, God, the White Sox. The White Sox. Like, I still feel like there's a chance where maybe Carolina over a couple weeks can right this ship, but man, have they looked terrible.
They've already been outscored by, I believe, 60 points through the first 2 weeks. Here's the thing.
And not by juggernaut offenses.
No.
By the Chargers and the Saints. Although maybe the Saints are much better than
maybe the Saints are a sleeping giant.
We just put a 40 spot on the Cowboys, so who knows? But it is bad. It's bad news. Now, speaking of streamers out there.
Can I just
sure, go ahead.
Here's why I don't want to drop Diontae Johnson. The Panthers have to pull the plug on Bryce Young. Like, he's going to.
Oh, really?
Will they?
Yeah, Dave Canellis does not want to lose the locker room. And you don't want to ruin this kid. Like, you have got to just reset him. And they're going to put Andy Dalton in. And Andy Dalton is actually going to distribute the ball to his best players. And I think
if Dalton plays, I agree with you, Pat.
Yeah,
if Dalton plays, I just worry about.
I think it might happen. I think it might happen in week 3. I think we might see Andy Dalton this week.
Well, Pat, if that happens, then I mean, look, the Panthers are obviously going to have another high pick. I mean, do you think they just go right back to that quarterback? Well, I mean, is it going to be a Quinn Ewers or is it going to be a Sanders or somebody like that? Like,
Probably,
right?
like, I think later in the season they'll reinsert Bryce Young, but right now they just have to stop this and let the kid like catch his breath and like see things for a couple more weeks. Don't ruin the guy. Don't lose the locker room. I think just put Andy Dalton in for a few weeks and like reset Bryce Young.
I agree
go,
with you,
everybody.
Joey. I think Carolina's going to be drafting a quarterback regardless.
I do
in
too.
next year's draft.
I do too. And look, that's good to Dave Canales. He can pick the quarterback he wants. And
Yep.
look, we said it in our coverage 2 years ago. We were covering the NFL draft stuff. We said it at the combine shows. We said it at everything. If you didn't think CJ Stroud was the most ready quarterback to come in the NFL and kick ass and take names, then I don't know what you were watching. Like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what college tape you were watching. I don't know what you were just glossed over by all of the Alabama-ness of the Bryce Young stuff. And I used to be, and Pat knows this too, because we would talk about it, and Boggs and I would talk about it. I was always really tough on Bryce Young. Anytime he felt pressure, it always felt like he couldn't deliver. And that was something early in his career that I always was pinging him for all the time. And look, we get to the NFL, like it's a whole other level of stuff there. The speed of the game, everything's very different. And he just has not been able to just get the job done in any sense of the word. So it's tough. It's real tough. But look, I think they have the right guys, the coach. They definitely don't have the right quarterback, and I think that's clear. And man, Andy Dalton replacing him. Ooh, get ahead of that, everybody. Get your Tyler Huntley. Get your Andy Dalton. Start stashing QBs in Superflex leagues. Speaking of QBs, let's start streaming some guys for this week. Fitzy, who you have for the people here?
Derek Carr, 19% rostered, possible shootout against the Eagles in week 3. And what might this look like if Derek Carr ever has to throw more than 20, 23 passes a game? With Rashid Shaheed looking as good as he has, and we know what Chris Olave can do. Like, I kind of want in on this offense.
I'm so mad. 2 weeks in a row, I sat Carr. The first week, I was like, well, that's on me because I was so excited to start Justin Fields over him. And then this week, I was like, well, he's playing the Cowboys. I don't want to go crazy. And sure enough, 2 weeks in a row, I'll score Justin Fields. Not happy in my Superflex spot. Not happy at all. D-Bro, who's your streaming QB for week 3?
People would be happy starting Geno Smith, man. Whether it's been rushing or whether the passing volume, I think he's going to get it done again. Going against Miami this week, I don't think there's not a cornerback that outside of Jalen Ramsey that I'm worried about on Miami secondary. So we saw Geno light it up for 327, 7.4 yards per attempt last week. He's shown some rushing upside. So yeah, get him in your lineups.
All right, how about a streaming tight end for week 3? Derek, who you have?
Oh, this is going to be nasty. But the matchup is there. The target volume has been there. I'm going to tell people to pick up Zach Ertz if you are in dire straits. They're going against Cincinnati Bengals. They have historically been a tight end funnel. Then after that, another good matchup. Gets the Arizona Cardinals right after that. So this is a player where you could pick up for 1 to 2% of your fab and really get 2 streamable matchups out of Zach Ertz. I think he could be a low-end tight end 1 over the next 2 weeks. And that pains me to say.
Pat, who are you streaming at tight end for week 3?
Hunter Henry, he was peppered with targets in week 2. Expect more of the same in week 3 because as thin as the Patriots are at wide receiver, who in that wide receiver core is going to be able to get open against Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed? Expect Hunter Henry to get a lot of targets again in week 3.
All right, Fitzy, how about a streaming defense for week 3?
Oh, the Buccaneers, 5% rostered right now against Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix has just looked completely overmatched. And Todd Bowles is going to dial up like blitzes like crazy to just try to rattle Bo Nix some more. I think he'll probably be effective in that endeavor.
I don't think it's too hard to rattle Bo Nix. D-Bro, defensive streamer for week 3.
Consistent with the theme, just target back quarterbacks, stream the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders just gave the Baltimore Ravens everything they can handle this last week. So what the heck do you think they're going to do to the Carolina Panthers?
That was my favorite football moment of the weekend, too, is when Max Crosby came out and after Gardner Minshew threw a pick and he came out and he grabbed Gardner Minshew. He's like, hey, it's going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Like on the field, like not even on the bench. He came out onto the field, grabbed him and was like talking him up and getting him focused and all that stuff. And they went out there and won that game. That was stunning. I mean, it eliminated me from my survivor pool, so I'm not too happy about it. That was a great football moment, and one for everybody to learn too. Yeah. You don't see the defense and the offense ever come together in that way sometimes. Really cool to see. That's leadership. I love it. Let's get to the kickers for the week here. D-Bro, who's a good kicker option here? I assume you're staying with the Raiders, right?
Yep. Short fields, easy field goal opportunities. Give me Daniel Carlson.
And Fitz, give me a kicker before we get to our top waiver wire ads.
Matt Prater against the Lions in a game, I think it opened with a Vegas total of 49 points. The Cardinals, look at the Cardinals putting up points. That's going to be one of the funnest games of week 3. It should be a high-scoring affair. Expect Prater to kick some field goals and extra points.
All right, let's get to the top waiver wire ads of the week. For those of you who are still playing fantasy football without Fab, I think you should play with Fab. But if you're still in one of these formats, D-Bro, run through your top 5.
Well, if Jerry Jeudy is out there, he is my number 1. Demarcus Robinson is my number 2. Rico Dowdle is my number 3. But if you have running back needs, I don't hate if you need to vault him to 1. After that, it would be Quentin Johnston and Carson Steele bringing up the number 5 spot.
All right, Fitzy, give me your top 5 waiver wire ads for week 3 in the NFL.
Also, Demarcus Robinson, number 1, if available. Otherwise, Quentin Johnston is my number 2. Rico Dowdle at number 3. I'm buying into D-Bro's Jerry Jeudy juice at number 4. And let's make Samaje Perine number 5. I don't love the idea of investing in this Chiefs backfield, but right now, Perine, I guess, is the guy I'd go for.
Now, remember, if you need extra help on the waiver wire, we've got the most waiver wire content on the planet at FantasyPros.com, and the waiver wire assistant is available on My Playbook. Sync your leagues for free. Download My Playbook, or just go to FantasyPros.com/MyPlaybook and sync your leagues, again, all of them for free, and find the players everywhere on the waiver wire that can help you to a fantasy football championship. We'll be back again next week because there will be injuries and there will be replacement people every single week. This is the nature of the beast. Luckily, I've got these 2 beasts to help me. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Pat Fitzmaurice and Derek Brown, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.